Typically, Maomao's quirkiness and skewed sense of reality is always to a comedic beat in this series, and I absolutely love it. But have to say, with episode 9 of Apothecary Diaries, definitely turned it into more of a heavier subject that honestly, with everything that's kind of going on with the series so far, does make perfect sense to Maomao as a character. Now, yes, most people wouldn't be as blunt as she is with the whole topic, but it is technically true. There's nothing that Maomao says in this later segment that is untrue. It is something that Jinshi honestly doesn't see and wouldn't see because of his placement in society. But yeah, episode 9, despite the fact that I think the earlier segments of this episode isn't that great, it wasn't that intriguing, there was still some bits in there that technically build to Jinshi's character, and like I said before, technically feels into Maomao's character and how she comes to that ultimate conclusion at the very end of it. But yeah, let's get through all the other stuff first. But yes, we have technically 2 mysteries in this episode. The first one being this higher up, this Conan, this guy that drank a lot. Seems like he has some troubles in his past. He lost his family members to a pandemic. And yes, has pretty much been entertaining himself by drinking a lot. And he got a sweet tooth, which all leads to his illness because of his stress and something that he would not see, ultimately leading to somebody pouring a bunch of salt into his drinks to the point that he dies. Obviously, once again, this is being one of those cases where it isn't necessarily a direct poisoning, but it's something where you're not managing your diet properly and you can overload on one particular mineral, and that being here, salt. So it kind of turns that whole question mark whether it is a murder or if it's just a prank gone wrong. But still kind of mixed within this very brief storyline, yes, we get a little more sense that Jinshi is acting a little bit differently. And this is something that Maomao has not seen before. Jinshi suddenly is, yes, he's obviously mourning the loss of this man, but it's sort of changing his character quite a bit. He's acting differently than what Maomao is sort of used to. And yes, it's also kind of piggybacking off of this whole situation before, where he thought that Maomao was, sleeping with Lihaku, that technically had to be... I like Goshi talking about how it's so difficult to get Gyokyu to stop laughing so that she can explain the situation. But it's all kind of leading into Maomao sort of seeing a different side of Jinshi. Him acting childish and also him acting more grown up. He's shaken up by the loss of this man. Even though, yes, it kind of just wraps up that whole conversation with a joke and the idea that Jinshi's going to let this bill go through that will limit her from being able to drink sake. And she's upset about that because she just got a whole jar of it. Yeah, seeing Maomao kind of worked up over sake is interesting, despite the fact that it's sweet, and she doesn't like that it's sweet and salty, technically. But no, what was also interesting in this whole scene that I want to make a point of is that, yes, you have Maomao at this point sort of saying, yeah, I'm kind of a coward right now. Because I'm seeing all the facts laid out, and I am giving my hypothesis on what exactly happened, it's kind of unsettling, because in a sense, she is presenting to them, without naming a person, she's presenting to them pretty much the target. She is pointing to the person that is going to be punished for this. But she's still kind of noting the fact that she's not the person that's going to actually enact the punishment. She's not the one that directly is going to point out the bad person and thus have them punished for it. So it's almost like her saying, I'm telling somebody else to rat out the bad guy, but it's not me ratting them out. And this sort of does play into a lot of the previous discussions around her finding some sort of conclusion to a murder or something like that. Like the whole thing with Li Shu's lady in waiting. She's pointing out that she is the one that's in the wrong, but she was sort of doing it in a way that that person didn't get punished. Almost like she doesn't want that blood on her hands. But yes, this leads into the second death, which is this lady in waiting that apparently plunged into this moat. Due to the cold, her body is well kept, and she sees a lot of signs in it that is sort of questionable. I did find that first scene with the body kind of interesting, the idea that Maomao is not allowed to touch the body. It has to have the quack do it. And they're kind of questioning her, well, why can't you? Is there like some sort of stigma that you have around it? It's like, no, my master, her dad, told her, do not touch bodies. Which totally makes sense. I like how everybody points that out, like, yeah, that makes sense. That yes, her father said, yeah, you have a problem with holding back. And if you ever touched a body, you would probably start digging up graves because you'd want to make medicines out of the bodies. Because yes, you could technically make medicines from body parts. So yeah, I guess apparently her father's response to this was just to say, don't touch a body. Never touch a body. But yes, she does still see a lot in the body itself. The fact that the feet are bandaged, which yes, is a tradition where they essentially take the toes and they bend it in and they bandage it up so it makes it nice and small. It kind of compacts the foot. which I'm kind of surprised that I haven't seen much in this particular world kind of shown so far. But yes, this seems to be a thing in this setting, which again, this is supposed to be like a alternate ancient China kind of setting. But yeah, she also points out the hands being extremely red and bloodied, kind of showing the sign that she tried to claw her way out of the moat itself, but failed. But additionally, on top of that, and this is a nice callback to the previous kind of storyline they had, was with Fuyo. Fuyo was the girl that was, you know, claiming that she was ill so that she never had to sleep with the emperor, so that one day she would keep herself for this general that her childhood friend would come and get her. And yes, she was given the impression that she was sleepwalking to get up onto the wall and to dance up there. So it kind of implies that Fuyo found a way to climb up it. Maomao, at some point while investigating that, found there was these points in the wall in which it was protruding out, which was probably used by the craftsmen. So yeah, the assumption there is that she could have climbed up it using those protrusions. But specifically with this case, this lady-in-waiting didn't seem like it would make sense because her feet were bound. It would make it more difficult for her, not just the fact that she's a woman, but also the fact that her feet are bound to be able to pull that off. Which, yes, leads it all into being a possibility that it's not necessarily her ending her own life, but in actuality that somebody did it. Maomao's whole point here is just to say specifically, I'm just saying it would be very difficult for her to get up there. So it had to be that somebody else was involved. She could have been ending her own life, but either way, she couldn't have done it alone. That's the major point there. This all leads to, after Maomao leaves Jinshi, this rumor that she hears that this girl was essentially a part of the party in the garden, and they end up finding this will and concluded that it was her ending her own life. Which, yes, would lead me and probably Maomao herself to the conclusion that this might be a cover-up. This is a common tactic within here, is that when you're trying to get rid of somebody and somebody finds out, you throw a lady-in-waiting in the picture. Lady-in-waitings are often kind of just casualties of the fact that they have to cover up for somebody else. So for instance, say one of these other concubines wanted Li Shu dead, they will enact a poisoning, and then once question marks come to them, they throw a lady-in-waiting out there. No, it's her fault. She did it. They're expendables to protect somebody else. And yes, my conclusion I'm having already with this is that there's a possibility this girl was killed in order to cover up the poisoning. Now, I don't get an indication that that's the conclusion that Maomao is drawing specifically for that in the conversation with Jinshi. Because this is the meat and potatoes of the episode, obviously, is the moment that Maomao sort of says something very unpleasant to Jinshi. In concluding her findings about this girl, saying that yes, she found that the feet are binded, she has wooden shoes, her fingers are all red, obviously shows that it would be difficult for her to climb up there, plus she showed signs of trying to climb out of the water, and while she's not sure if she was ending her own life or not, or if it was murder, she just knows that there's no tools there to get up there, so somebody else was involved. But here's where things start to get very heavy in the idea that, as Maomao's kind of thinking about this, is it murder? Is it her ending her own life? She starts thinking about her own situation. She says she hates the idea of ending her own life, but she also hates the idea of somebody else killing her. Yes, the joke here that's typical for Maomao is she's saying that I don't want that because I want to be able to keep testing poisons. And so as Jinshi questions her, she basically speaks out her mind. Hey, if you have to give the order to execute me, please do it with poison. And he's like, wait, I don't want to do that. Oh crap, I'm making him mad. I'm sorry, yes, if you want to behead me or hang me, I won't complain. No, what I'm saying is I won't do that. Jinshi's like, I would never do that. But Maomao's reply here is that simply, I am a commoner. This is common case for us. We're expendables. Unlike the higher ups, the important people, it's technically on the whims of somebody. The first moment I make a mistake, Maomao's saying to Jinshi, the first moment I make a mistake, I'm dead. While you're saying, no, I wouldn't do that, it's simply that. It is sort of flagging that at some point that's going to come to the case. And I assume that. I assume the big thing that's going to essentially make Maomao sort of respect Jinshi more is going to be a situation where somebody comes after Maomao and Jinshi has to defend her. That's just an assumption at this point. That at some point in this story, Jinshi is going to have to protect Maomao from being killed. And that's going to be probably through his authority. In my theory of Jinshi being the younger brother of the emperor, that's enough authority. Like, he could probably make that call. The only call he's not going to be able to make is to tell the emperor he can't do what he does. But I would assume that everywhere else, Jinshi has a lot of power. But yes, this scene right here, I think, is a culmination of my thought process where I feel Maomao's kind of sitting. Again, Maomao's weird, and I love it. I love how quirky Maomao is. She's obsessed with poisons and consuming poisons and testing poisons. She's obsessed with trying to figure things out and study things and put medicines together and different types of poisons. But additionally, what they're adding to it with this episode, which they've not really gotten into too much detail on, is that Maomao sort of has a skewed perspective on death. Yes, this drowned lady, when she goes up there, she doesn't even bat an eye. Unlike everybody else that's horrified, this doesn't bother her. She says it's because where she used to work with the pleasure district and stuff like that, right next to it was like a lawless area. A lot of death happens. So she's seen bodies before. This is something that doesn't faze her. But additionally, we're adding on top of that thought process and that kind of skewed way of seeing things, which is not a bad thing. It is bad that she has to see so much death, but it's not necessarily that it's her fault. The other thing they're adding to it is a product of her placement and the product of her status. I am a commoner. She said it when she first arrived in the rear palace. I'm a servant. And servants are expendables. It's tough. You don't know when the next day you're going to be dead. You're going to step in front of the wrong person. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to be cleaning these clothes and somebody blames you for something else. It's that simple. Like I said, their servants are sort of like body shields for those in power. You just put a servant in front of you and they take the bullet. And Maomao, I think right here, it's not stated, and so this is completely me speculating at this point, is I feel like Maomao right here is sort of putting all those puzzle pieces together. It's just like that whole montage that she goes through where it's showing all these different people that she's seen die in the rear palace. It's putting into perspective how often she has seen cases where somebody dies because of somebody else. She's saying, I'm not ready to die, but she's fully acknowledging and telling Jinshi that most of the time people don't have that choice. It's just fate that somebody else will target you and they will take your lives into their own hands. So she's telling Jinshi, the moment I mess up, because it's that simple around here, simply just mess up and you have to execute me, give me poison. Because based on what I keep seeing, it's only a matter of time. I'm seeing too many people die, and it's always at the hands of somebody else. So at least when I die, I want to be able to choose, if possible, how I go. And again, I think a lot of that, in my assumption, is her seeing that a lot of this has to do with somebody with power covering up something by killing somebody else. And I think she's already tying together in this situation, that lady in waiting died because somebody else wanted Li Shu dead, and she took the fall for it. I know they didn't specify specifically that lady in waiting was being called for the poisoning, just saying that she was present there. But my assumption is that they're trying to cover up what actually happened with Li Shu. Again, it's tragic, but it's fascinating at the same time that Maomao's state of mind right now is being swamped with death. And through that swamping of death, she's realizing that she doesn't have control over her own life. And I don't think that she has a perspective that she will ever have control over her own life. It's always at the hands of somebody else. So it is kind of poetic in the idea of her just wanting to at least instill upon Jinshi how she would want to go about being ended. But I think the chilling aspect of this whole scene is how calm she is in saying it. And I think that's the thing that bothers Jinshi so much. And I like the fact that it shows how upset Jinshi is. Yes, Jinshi cares for Maomao. We know, we get a sense already that Jinshi does like Maomao. This guy wants her, and she is not accepting any of his advances. But showing how upset he is, seeing how coldly she says it, is what's upsetting. I'm just deciding what kind of poison I want to go with. No, I don't want to die. Eventually I'm going to die. It's going to be at the hands of somebody else. Hey, when you're told to do this, when I mess up, give me poison. But yeah, the final scene is Goshun having finalized his investigation after 2 months. He finally found somebody with burn marks on their arm, and it's the lead lady-in-waiting to Ado. So we're finally going to get Ado in the picture, which I was kind of curious when that was going to come around. And yeah, based on the preview, it looks like it's going to be coming sooner than expected. So yeah, kind of implies that at least the lady-in-waiting for Ado is wanting to get rid of Li Shu at that point, but who knows? Again, we haven't necessarily tied in everything together. It's just we have this murder attempt at the garden, or this poisoning attempt at the garden. We have Li Shu being involved with the previous emperor. We have these wooden tablets being burnt and them causing a burn on this guy, and thus trying to find somebody that has a burn mark on their skin that might have been involved with handling these plaques. With Maomao stating that the plaques themselves were possibly used to communicate secretly, it kind of implies this idea that somebody, at least this lady-in-waiting, was possibly contacting somebody else that may possibly want somebody dead. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm hoping we get a kind of tie-in with all that stuff together eventually, because that's been kind of sitting for, I don't know, 7 episodes at this point. When do we get the first place? I think it was at the beginning of the 4th episode is when they first brought up the wooden placards. But yeah, overall, really fantastic episode. Like I said, I think the most intriguing aspect of the story that has been so far, and the underlining of it, is that idea of the frailty of the lives of those that are servants and commoners, and how they are so easily discarded. And I think what this whole setup right now is sort of hinting at is, yes, the inevitability of Jinshi having to make a call for Maomao's life. Maomao's going to step out of line, make a mistake, or obviously, some point, Maomao becomes a target of somebody. She's solving too many cases. She's figuring this out. She's going to get close to figuring out possibly who was trying to kill Li Shu or something like that. And that person's going to want Maomao dead. And if that person is in some sort of power, it's as easy as just walking out and saying, Maomao did something wrong, execute her, and they will take action. Because again, her being a commoner, her life is very fragile. And so we'll see how that goes, but that's my thoughts on episode 9 of Apothecary Diaries. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below, comment, let me know about the episode. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you got my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you like this content and you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. Greatly appreciate what it does, and y'all take care.